The Chevy Corvette boasts one of the longest and most dynamic histories of any vehicle ever made. From the original narrow-bodied C1 Corvette to the modern mid-engine 8000 RPM Z06, the Corvette has evolved through many shapes and forms. Among the 8 generations of Corvettes over the past 70 years, one in particular has achieved almost mythical status. This is the car that makes $200,000 resto-mod Corvette owners envious, and was one of the fastest production cars in the world when it was originally built. So let's dive into the wild history and the impressive specs of the infamous 1967 L88 Corvette. To understand what made the L88 Corvette so special, we need to examine the Corvette on which it was based. The C2 generation of Corvettes, built from 1963 to 1967, marked a major step forward in the development of the Corvette. The C2 Corvette was designed from the outset to utilize a V8 engine. It was wide, low, and particularly shark-like in appearance, especially with the bumpers removed. These cars featured independent rear suspension and had commendable handling capabilities. Unlike muscle cars, these were true sports cars. Early models featured Chevy's potent 327 cubic inch small block, which, in top trim, could produce over 360 horsepower. Later in the production run, Chevrolet began offering big block engines, including the 396 and the 427 cubic inch motors in the Corvettes. These big block engines significantly increased the horsepower to well over 400, reaching around the 420 to 430 mark. A considerable jump from the 360 to 365 horsepower available with the top trim 327 small block. These big block Corvettes were seriously fast, undeniably so, with regular 427 big block models achieving 12-second quarter-mile times. Now, the L88s did use a 427 big block. However, these engines were much more radical. While the regular 427-powered C2 Corvettes were already quite formidable street machines, the L88 cars were on a completely different level. The L88's 427 cubic inch big block was officially rated by General Motors at 430 horsepower from the factory. However, GM's numbers were far from accurate. Actual dyno results revealed that the real power output of the L88 cars was around 560 horsepower, significantly higher than the factory claims. It's rumored that, besides for insurance reasons, GM underrated the L88 cars so heavily to deter normal customers from buying them compared to other 427 Corvettes. The idea was that on paper, if they all made about the same horsepower, but the other models had more options and were much cheaper, regular customers would opt for the regular 427 Corvettes. This strategy ensured that only those who truly understood the L88 Corvette's capabilities would purchase the L88 package. GM wanted the L88 cars in the hands of people who would utilize every ounce of their immense power. These engines were truly savage, and it's astonishing they were even offered in a road car. To start, you were supposed to run 103 octane gas in your L88 car. The motors had 12.5 to 1 compression, forged rods, forged pistons, hardened push rods, a high-lift cam that was not very streetable, an 850 CFM 4-barrel carb, and even factory aluminum heads. But the L88 wasn't just a big motor strapped to a Corvette. Everything about the L88 Corvette was designed for performance. This was a racetrack brawler. It lacked extra fan shrouds and a choke to improve streetability. Speaking of gears, the L88 cars came standard with the M22 Rock Crusher 4-speed transmission, a robust gearbox needed to handle all that torque. The M22 Rock Crusher, if you're not familiar, had straighter cut gears than other manual transmissions of the time, resulting in a very loud and distinct whine reminiscent of modern race car transmissions. Power was delivered to the rear pavement through a positraction rear end with drag-focused 4.56 rear gears. Creature comforts were not even considered for L88 owners. No heat, no air conditioning, no radio, nothing. These cars were built to run, and no unnecessary weight was going to hold them back at the track. On the exterior, the C2 L88s didn't look all that different from the regular big block Corvettes in 1967. However, the later C3 generation Corvettes, which also had an L88 option, featured some minor exterior changes like the now famous L88 hood. Despite these visual tweaks, the powertrain of the C3 L88 Corvettes remained relatively the same as the C2 L88. Chevy produced the L88 Corvettes from 1967 to 1969, building around 216 in total. The 1967 model year was particularly special as it was the last year of the C2 Corvette. While the L88 package was available in both the C2 and C3 body styles, the C2 L88s are considered the holy grail for Corvette collectors due to their rarity. Of the 216 L88 cars ever made, only 20 were from the 1967 model year in the C2 body style. And of those 20, only around 10 are known to still exist today. The problem with the L88 Corvette, which led to its relatively slow sales, was also what made it extraordinary. It was a purpose-built racer, not a particularly street-friendly car. The L88 Corvette was designed for the track, but could be driven on the street, not the other way around. Its high price also contributed to its limited appeal. In the mid to late 1960s, spending big money on rare, track-focused cars wasn't as common as it is today. The MSRP of an L88 Corvette was just over $6,000, significantly more than a base Corvette, which cost about $4,000 and was better equipped for street use. As a result, only performance enthusiasts with deep pockets could afford an L88 Corvette. Now the C3 L88 Corvettes, of which there are about 180, saw much more widespread use and recognition. They even raced C3 L88 Corvettes at prestigious events like Le Mans and the Bonneville Salt Flats. The C3 L88s have a well-documented history of racing and high-performance achievements. Fast forward to today, and the 1967 L88 Corvettes, specifically the C2 models, are among the most valuable American cars ever made. To put it in perspective, the last auction for a 1967 L88 Corvette fetched around $2.65 million. In comparison, C3 L88 cars sell for between $400,000 and $600,000. So, if you ever encounter a real L88 Corvette, particularly a C2 model, make sure to get a picture with it because there are very few left in existence.